quickly is to respond to them in writing also,
well,
because that will of course create the record that you can then base any further action on.
Absolutely. I mean, there have been 2 written dispatches sent.
Correct.
And you have acknowledged them.
Correct.
But there has not been any reply by any party.
Right.
Nor have there been any changes.
Oh, there will be. There will be either a reply that at least to our satisfaction, because ultimately we are charged with issuing the approval that to our satisfaction responds to your concerns and your comments, or there will be, as you point out, changes to the plans to correct any mistakes that have been made. There's no question about that.
So is it normal course for your office to issue a applicant a conditional approval when there are known variances?
No, of course.
Has that ever happened before?
No, nor can it happen.
Okay, there's no precedent.
No, nor can it happen.
Okay.
Let me make this clear. If there are any variances required,
Mm-hmm.
then the Class 2 special permit cannot be issued and cannot stand on its own, because if there's a variance required, there's a separate process for a variance, and that too is a public hearing process.
Okay.
Yes.
Does the department take into account the tax ramifications of these, these proposals? For example, the free parking garage sitting next to the city-owned parking garage?
No, tax ramifications are not within our scope of review.
Okay.
We are charged, just to make it as clear as I possibly can, and I think you actually said it close to accurately, if not perfectly accurately, but just again to say it as clearly as I can, we are charged as part of the Class 2 special permit process to do mostly mainly two things. One is certainly to ensure that the project as presented is in compliance with the applicable regulations contained in the zoning ordinance, city code, etc. That's a minimal requirement. And then, above and beyond that, to conduct a design review to ensure that the project as presented is, generally speaking, in compliance with the character of the area.
Are you aware that these issues represent the same exact text? Like this portion of this project is affected by the portion that did not pass. I mean, are you aware of that? Did you review the meeting last year, the Planning and Zoning Board meeting?
I did. I was present.
No, you weren't. It was Carmen Sanchez.
Oh, was
the appeal meeting. You were
see.
present for everything but the final appeal meeting. Ms. Sanchez presented on behalf of the department at that meeting.
I defer to you. I think you were present, so if I wasn't present, I wasn't present.
Okay.
But yes, I'm fully familiar with the full record of this application. And ultimately, again, you will, I hope, or I'm actually requesting that you convey to us all these comments in writing, and we will address them one by one thoroughly.
Absolutely. I'd like to share something with you, and then we
Please.
can adjourn.
Please.
This is Mr. Ziskovich's speech at that meeting.
Very well. That is Bernard Siskovich, Miami architect.
Are sent to all homeowners associations in the area, and they're posted on the website. There's plenty of notice on that. So I just wanted to verify that for the record.
Yes, but there's no public meeting, and the Class 2 allows, this is what this is saying, that the planning director can make that decision. That's my point.
That's part of the amendment.
Next one, 31st and 32nd Streets, minimum 60-foot right-of-way. They're inserting the word minimum. What that means is you can make the street any size you want, which means that the character of the street could be changed by the planning director. Guidelines. Where actual parking is provided, 1 foot wide gutter should where parallel parking is provided. That means you can remove the parallel parking. That means that the cars that are parked on the street can now become more roadway. So now you have roadway next to sidewalk, which is not the character of Midtown. The whole point is that it's a pedestrian-friendly environment, and that gives this individual or the city the ability to do that just because they want to. Travel lanes have a minimum width of 10 feet. That's inserted. Why did they insert a minimum width of 10 feet? Because they want to add more travel lanes. It's not designed. 31st Street is not designed for 4 lanes. It's designed for 2 lanes. Medians. Stone or concrete medians may be placed within the right-of-way, where appropriate, to provide a pedestrian refuge.
That's right here.
For street crossings and optimize vehicular travel. They're going to need a refuge because that's what the street will become. In closing, I write these codes. I write them all over the country, just like others do. Typically, a text amendment is to correct text that has some kind of incidental impact where the language of the code might be confused possibly need some amendment. I think you have to ask yourself this question. Why are you changing the code through text amendment without seeing a project, without seeing a drawing? And the impact of it is not that it's a text amendment. The impact of it is that the way the code was written, which is why Midtown is there so fast, is that if you abide by the rules, you get to build your project without a public hearing. So when you change the text amendment, what you're really doing is you're eliminating any public hearing process other than an appeal after it's done. And that's why I'm alarmed. This is a very big project. I have nothing against Walmart, personally. That's not my issue. My issue is that the impact of these text amendments and giving all the authority to a single person within the city without public hearing that affects so many people, whether pro or con, seems to fly in the face of the intention of why we wrote the code. We wrote the code to say one thing. If you abide by the rules, this is what you get. If you don't want to abide by the rules, make your project public, let it be vetted, and then if you win, you win. Thank you.
I have one question, Mrs. Idrich.
Perfect.
I think he says it more eloquently than either of us.
Valid points all. I think worth noting for those who are here or those who may be listening, Bernard Tiskovich and his company were the original drafters of the actual master plan that presently governs the development in Midtown. So credit where credit is due. I think it's also fair to add that the code and the regulations as written and presently memorialized in the zoning ordinance do provide in certain instances discretion to the planning and zoning department and ultimately to the planning and zoning director, so that on a case-by-case basis judgment calls can be made as to what the best design is. And that has to be part and parcel of every design review process, because one cannot, as a drafter of ordinances, and Mr. Tiskovich is a very capable drafter of ordinances, one cannot possibly foresee every possible aspect of every possible development that takes place within a district. And because one cannot do that, what are then set forth are, in some instances, standards and guidelines. Not necessarily requirements, but standards and guidelines to provide guidance to the planning and zoning department in reviewing these projects. So, to bring it back to your point, to the extent that any of the items here can be adjusted through administrative review through these standards and guidelines, that's fair game. You are, however, positing that in certain instances in this particular project, aspects of the project actually would require a variance and are not subject to the administrative discretion of the planning and zoning director. To the extent that that is the point you're making, and I understand it loud and clear and accept it fully, we certainly are charged with making a case, demonstrating hopefully to your satisfaction that either those aspects of the project are within our discretion to approve or are not, and in that case then they would require a variance. That's very well accepted.
I could have a check about an elevation. The bottom line is, Walmart's plan does not match the north side of Midtown. That is the worst offense of this plan. Not to mention the disjointed two plans within a plan concept, which, as the UDRB noted, has never been executed before within the city of Miami. It is an unprecedented acceptance by your office using your administrative powers, which are duly reserved. But this will simply not match the existing Midtown Miami district further to the north. And if you look at it, this side of their elevation, the North Miami side, in the north block of Midtown, there is a second floor and third level of active use offices with a 10-foot setback that provides for pedestrian access from the street. And that's very important to note, okay? This is not what Midtown North looks like. There's no way the city should allow this district to look like it was designed by 2 or even 3 different architects. Walmart's plan does not fit. We cannot let them mismatch the city's newest district and, frankly, a budding gem. And if you look across the street in Midtown Miami, their attorneys said at the UDRB meeting. They said nobody has activated Miami Avenue. Well, I go there all the time. And there's a row of restaurants that sprung up across the street from Midtown Miami already, and some art galleries as well, retail stores. It's actually been a double bonus for the city. It's greatly improved the city's tax base by installing Midtown with the current design and sticking to the code. If we have a Walmart there, it may condemn swaths of that area to inactivity and create a desert where pedestrians fear to cross due to dodging trucks and cars, and a terrible decision now would make a Walmart that would be, Walmart would embed a terrible decision today in concrete for decades to come, just like the Omni Mall.
Okay, and the only point I wanted to add, and I know you're familiar with this, but I just want to make this clear, whether this particular project is a Walmart or not is something that I cannot.
Of course,
nor can I. I'll just make the statement very brief, just again to note it on the record. So whether it's a Walmart or a JCPenney's or a Sears or any other large retail merchandiser such as Walmart is immaterial to us. It's not something that is the subject of our review and not under our discretion.
Absolutely.
The question before us, and I know you know this, but just to make it clear, the question before us is whether this particular development, regardless of what brand it is it appropriate? And you're bringing up points that we would do well to consider as to why it may not be appropriate. And so we will certainly consider.
Well, I urge you to decline this application promptly for not meeting Midtown Miami's master plan.
And the only way I would be able to actually deny the application is if it did not meet the regulations set forth in the Midtown Miami master plan.
Absolutely. They are entirely welcome to apply for a major use special permit. It would be appropriate for the changes that they're required. I believe one is required for each variance, correct?
Again, happy to.
Is that correct? One per variance?
A variance is processed through a major use.
So major use special permit as opposed to a class 2 special permit.
That's
and then
correct,
again,
yes.
For everyone's knowledge, a major use special permit would require a public hearing. It would actually have to be approved ultimately by, is it the planning commission or actually the city commission?
The city commission, and as well require a traffic study for the area, which would tell residents exactly what's coming when Walmart arrives, which right now, residents have no idea how much traffic a Walmart would generate. There's been no traffic study provided nor requested by the city.
All right. Let me clarify that point then just for a moment. Mr. Stern is correct. No traffic study has been requested because the application has been proposed in a manner, so says the applicant, for us to verify. For us, the Planning and Zoning Department, to verify. The applicant has posited that this application as proposed complies with the entitlement parameters of the original permit that encompasses all of Midtown District. So Midtown was approved roughly about 10 years ago, give or take a year. And at that point in time, a thorough traffic impact study and all sorts of studies were prepared and presented to the City Commission in a public hearing, which were accepted and adopted as an amendment to the zoning ordinance.
And if I may, a CRA was created to collect all of the tax income from that area to pay for bonds that the city issued. And if those bonds are not paid, if they're underpaid, if the parking garage underperforms, then there will be a special assessment on all residents of Midtown Miami. We would call it a Walmart tax on Midtown Miami to cover any shortfalls from parking revenue. Which means if this experiment, destroying the district guidelines, allowing a retailer to build a project that's 40 to 50% larger than can be actually supported under the guidelines of the district, fails, then there will be a tax in the area. So if there's a failure, it will not be a small failure, it will be a spectacular failure, because it will raise the cost of doing business in Midtown for everybody but Walmart, simultaneously depressing the property values.
So I'm not going to respond to that statement because I'm not in a position to respond to that statement. What I can say, however, is that, again, for everyone who's here in this room and possibly watching
I'm
this,
just highlighting the gravity of the situation.
Perfect. But we are also doing, please be mindful of this, is conveying a very critical point of view regarding this particular development application.
Yeah, I'm simply providing facts and a worst case scenario that's realistic and very possible.
I'm going to make only a quick statement because I think it's fair to do so. So